This season of Advent, traditionally a time of waiting, pausing, in expectation for the incarnation, the Word made flesh, and an epiphany, the revelation and manifestation of the Word made flesh. The Sisters of Charity, the Word made flesh, Caritas Christi Urgit Nos, the revelation and manifestation of the divine love in our world. It's about 11 and a half years since our gifting the expression of this revelation and manifestation of love to the world through Mary Aikenhead Ministries. The essence of this gift is what Francis calls the culture of encounter, and what we call the service of the poor. We respect and support all who make up Mary Aikenhead Ministries in health and education, for who they are and how they are. As we move into this time of prayer, let us be inspired by the gospel call and the values of Mary Aikenhead Ministries, while holding in our hearts and our prayer the thousands of staff, volunteers, and the people they serve. And we now reflect on that foundational reading.
When Jesus came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, he went to the synagogue on the Sabbath day, as was his custom. He stood up to read, and the scroll of the prophet Isaiah was given to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place.
The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to let the oppressed go free, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favour.
Jesus rolled up the scroll, gave it back to the attendant and sat down. The eyes of all in the synagogue were fixed on him.
Today, this scripture has been fulfilled in your hearing.
We'll just pause for a few moments and reflect on that inspirational scripture passage. And now we prepare to reflect on the values of Mary Aikenhead Ministries, which are reflected in their service.
Love.
Mary Aikenhead. May we always act more and more purely by faith and love, and we shall be able to do all things in God who strengthens us.
The unconditional love of Jesus Christ is the primary motivator and basic character that defines all our ministries and guides our actions.
Justice.
Mary Aikenhead. May we never act contrary to justice and truth, and may we be guided by charity in all our actions and words.
We advocate particularly for those who are vulnerable, marginalised, and rendered voiceless.
Compassion.
Mary Aikenhead. Our duty is to be like the Good Shepherd in the very parable taught us by his own sacred words. We must support those who are weak and bind up the wounds and fractures of our flock.
Compassion recognises that each person is created in the image of God. We are impelled to reach out with humility and love.
Hope.
Mary Aikenhead. God will settle everything. The work is his. He will bring things right in the end.
Hope is to believe in the revolutionary potential of faith to make all things anew. Hope arises from the wellsprings of purpose and meaning and orients the human spirit towards possibility and new life.
Preferential option for the poor.
Mary Aikenhead. To bring to each person the love, tenderness, and concern of Christ for the poor, seeing Christ in everyone we serve.
As followers of Jesus Christ, we are called to make a preferential option for the poor. This includes inviting others to join us in proactively creating conditions which enable the voices of the marginalised and vulnerable to be heard, shared, and amplified.
Mary, when she said her yes to God, and Mary Aikenhead, who followed God's calling and became alive to God's love. Our hymn is Alive to God's Love.
Like Mary, whose heart was open and true, filled with the grace to hope and believe, alive to your spirit, awake to your call, ready with courage to answer in joy. Make us alive to your love within. May we grow stronger in faith. God, help us to listen, to learn, and to care. May our hearts like Mary's be true, showing your heart in all we do.
Like Mary, whose life was one with the poor, who hungered for justice and peace in her time.
May we live with compassion, bringing hope to our world, ready with courage to reach out in joy. Oh, make us alive to your love within. May we grow stronger in faith. God, help us to listen, to learn, and to care. May our hearts like Mary's be true. Oh, make us alive to your love within. May we grow stronger in faith. God, help us to listen, to learn, and to care. May our hearts like Mary's be true, showing your heart in all we do. Being your heart in all we do.
Thank you very much, Kate and Suzette. Absolutely beautiful. So, sisters, now I want to introduce you to part one of a conversation with the trustees of Mary Aikenhead Ministries. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. This is really a very important and special occasion. I shared this image before, but I feel, after the Beatitudes, Jesus took his disciples and went up on the hill and got away from the crowds, and they just started to have a wonderful dialogue. And I think that's what we're going to do this afternoon. The four of you sitting here in this room and the three who are on Zoom, who will be included in this conversation. And I know our sisters are really looking forward to this, because at our last chapter, our sisters were totally committed to supporting Mary Aikenhead Ministries, to praying for you all, and to doing whatever they can to ensure that you're very successful in this mission, in this church mission. So, Richard, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Richard Haddock. I'm the newest, not necessarily the youngest of the trustees. I'm also chair of the trustees. I'm married, a wife and 2 children and 5 wonderful grandchildren. And if one was to ask me what's my background or skills, it's probably law and finance. And I'm fortunate in that I've had some background with the Sisters of Charity prior to becoming a trustee, in that I was involved with the foundation and also involved with the hospital and their fundraising activities.
Laureen, I know our audience know you very well, but they don't know about the time I went down to school to have a yarn to you about being a trustee of Mary Aikenhead Ministries.
Yes. No,
Maybe you'd like to share that.
Yeah, well, I can't say that goes in the joy bucket, Claire. Claire came on visitation, and I think the sisters know that I was at St John's at Campbelltown at the time and loving every bit of it. And she goes, "I want to see you." And I'm like, "Oh God, this doesn't sound good." And so we find a room and we go and sit down, and she goes, "I'd like to ask you to think about becoming a trustee of Mary Aikenhead Ministries." I'm not sure what my response was, Claire, you might remember. But I guess in a way I was a little bit thrown, but I also thought, well, if Claire and the council think that this is something I can do, I really can't say no. The biggest word that comes into my mind is that I'm full of pride for the way the ministries have flourished, which is what the intention was in setting up Mary Aikenhead Ministries. I've found it hard to get back into high-level meetings, and they're fairly intense meetings, but I did have 12 years of experience, so that has helped. But yes, it is pride. When I looked back I've brought this little report with me today. I looked back in that, and I couldn't remember a whole lot of the things that we did in the lead up to setting up Mary Aikenhead Ministries. But from now in 2020, looking back, it was absolutely the right decision. It was courageous at the time. It was a bit frightening at the time. But yes, I'm full of pride, and I do love it, actually.
I'm Penny Wright. I joined at the same time as Laureen, Peter and Michael, May 2019. I'm the mother of 6 children. I live in Maroubra. I had a career in banking, then a full-time career as a mother, and now as a solicitor in my own practice. I first met the sisters when I joined the foundation. That was a lovely time of 9 years. That's where I met Richard. And then I was asked by Claire to consider becoming a trustee, and was delighted to be asked to be one. The sisters for me have always been there at touch points in my life when I was searching for meaning and what would be next. And it's almost as if the Holy Spirit has willed them into my life at just the perfect time for me to say yes. Being a trustee challenges very deeply, because I feel a call to bring my best self at all times, and that does cut deeply when you could be managerial, organisational or operational, but you're actually being called to think far deeper and to to know what's right and discern by the Spirit what you should be doing or saying or how you should be participating. And in that, it's a vocation in a way, because it calls on every part of you as a person, as a Catholic, and as a person of faith. So it does bring joy and challenges, but one of the great things is getting to know the other trustees and joining together to discern the path forward.
Peter Howard's my name. I think to myself, I have met people and women who have made a difference and have entrusted that legacy to me in my role as a trustee. And someone last week described me as, oh, he sits around in reception and he walks the streets. Well, I'm a great believer in you've got to be a street person to be in the hands of the Holy Spirit, who can then take you to these meetings that we have, which are intense at times, but we all have great fun. And you're being influenced all the time subtly by the Holy Spirit and Mary Aikenhead. Your global get-together this year was such a joyful time for all the sisters, even though Sister Patricia was very tentative at times when she was going to press a button. And I think that's opened up a new world for me. It's not only just the Sisters of Charity in Australia. It's the Sisters of Charity internationally. And that has taught me to look a little bit further beyond the horizon that I'm currently looking at. I live in Parramatta, so that has a few links with Mary Aikenhead and the Sisters of Charity. And I just feel worn out at times, challenged at times, and it takes a fair bit of effort to say, how can I do this better, and what more can I do than what I'm currently doing? In the name of church, with the Holy Spirit and with Mary Aikenhead. So that's a little bit about me.
And now let's bring our three trustees in on Zoom. Janet, Gary and Michael.
Good morning, everyone, and it's really a delight to be with you, even though I'm not meeting with you face to face. It's great for me to have the opportunity to talk to you a little about myself, a little bit about being a trustee, a little bit about the Mary Aikenhead Ministries. I'm very aware that I know very few of you on a personal level, and obviously, therefore, very few of you know me on a personal level. So a little bit of a potted history for me. I grew up in Rydalmere, very working class, went to primary school in Rydalmere, but Mum and Dad, who both left school in Year 9, were determined that their three daughters would have a great education and go to university. And so in mid-1960s, I travelled by bus and train from Rydalmere to Ashfield every day so that I could go to Bethlehem at Ashfield. And that was a great start for me in my journey with the Sisters of Charity. For the 6 years that I was there at school, I was educated by, I think, outstanding women. After I left school, I went to Macquarie, I did university, and I became a teacher. And I'm still involved in education. Was a principal for 25 years in 2 different schools. But my relationship with the sisters really only recommenced in about 1999, when Sister Helen Clark was on the school board for Loreto Kirribilli, where I was principal. And it was through Helen's urging that I came back into contact with the congregation, and eventually was asked by Sister Claire to join you in this great endeavour of being a public juridic person with the trust as a trustee. I love it. what can I say? I love it. Who knew that aged 60 plus, I would have a new vocation, I think. I've always believed in the role of the Holy Spirit. I've always believed that we have a responsibility, if we truly believe in vocation, we have a responsibility in life to, in my words, put ourselves in the way of God.
Thank you, Sister Claire. So I came to the trustee table, the round table, through a rather long journey through St Vincent's Health Australia. I just was so amazed and taken by the work that the medical people were doing, the history of Mary Aikenhead and the Sisters of Charity. And so when I was invited to think about being a trustee, I thought, well, this is something that I can continue to be part of in terms of my journey with the sisters and be part of this ministry that is just so beautiful in its way. And as a lay ecclesial leader, I suppose the church and our Lord is asking us to stand forward, stand up and build on the beautiful work of the Sisters of Charity. And I'm a chartered accountant by profession. I spent my working life in both the mining industry and the energy industry. So to come to health and to education and to work and live this gospel message has been just a true joy for me.
Thanks so much. It's a great honour to be a trustee of Mary Aikenhead Ministries. I started my secondary education at St Lawrence's College with the Christian Brothers, went to the University of Queensland and studied, of all things, economics, the dismal science, and then completed my doctorate in the field of finance, particularly looking at the performance of superannuation funds. And the faith journey for me has been a really blessed one in that I've crossed paths with the Holy Spirit sisters here in Brisbane and assisted them with some finance matters. Was on the board of Holy Spirit, or now St Vincent's Private Northside, with my dear colleague Gary Humphreys. And then I came to know the charism and the work of Mary Aikenhead and the Sisters of Charity. And to think today that you, the sisters, have given me the great honour of travelling with you to help on governance and stewardship and finance matters is incredibly humbling and a great blessing.
Sisters, I'd just like us to take 2 minutes of prayer for the trustees of Mary Aikenhead Ministries. The second part of our video, I would like us to watch now, where the trustees share with us their vocation as trustees of Mary Aikenhead Ministries. Richard, we've had the delight of having the AGM last week on Thursday, and at the AGM you had 6 points that you were very pleased about that you reported back to us. So why don't you share those with us?
I must say I can't remember the 6 points, Claire, but I think the point that I wanted to make that was probably most importantly is that apart from the enjoyment of working with my fellow trustees, we have challenges. It is very easy for our ministries to become corporatised and just work as if they are a corporate entity. And I think part of our challenge is to ensure that they remember they are there to carry on the charism of the sisters. I think we're doing that well. I think the fact that we are continually trying to form ourselves as well enables us to ensure that that happens. But it is a challenge. And the fact that we recognise it's a challenge, I think is the first step to making sure that we then face up to that challenge.
Well, the strategy document is very much written to look at mission not just as an add-on to operations, but as the very lens that we view our operations through. So I think we're more and more coming to that realisation as we've matured that it's not just letting our works run their businesses, but making sure the mission's embedded in them.
Very much so, very much so. And it comes back, I think, to the fact that we have a sister of charity as one of our trustees. And I think that is invaluable because we have in that trustee someone who continually reminds us as to what it would be like to have a sister wandering through those ministries, because we can't wander through the ministries and have anywhere near the same impact that a sister did, but we can be reminded about that sort of thing. So I encourage you, Claire, to continue to have, or your successor, a sister of charity trustee. But just one will be enough.
Especially a troublesome one.
I think what we need to remind ourselves is that, especially with Mary Aikenhead Ministries, which is one of the larger PJPs, that it is going to have an increasing influence in the church, and we need to pick up that, that challenge and ensure that we do have that influence in the church that our size deserves. And we are part of AMPJP, which brings together a number of PJPs. And I think AMPJP is recognising how important they are going to be, and they really will be a third pillar of the church, and that's important.
Yeah, I'll just pick up on Richard's point of AMPJP. That's the Association of Ministerial PJPs, which is in its infancy, but is growing. And it's a conglomerate of most of the PJPs that have been established since we were established. And it's becoming quite influential as an agency of the church in its conglomeration. So I think we have to encourage it. Richard, I think, sits on the council, don't you?
I do sit on the council,
and there's a really good executive officer who keeps us very well informed of everything that it's involved in.
You know, when I see ACBC and CRA and Ministerial PJP, that makes my heart glow, because that is church. That's the future, that is the now of church, and that is the future of church.
I think it's also saying to the laity within the church, you have a very important role and you're going to help shape the future of the church in Australia in ways that we're not even aware of at the moment. And the coming together of really committed Catholic men and women to support the religious, to support the clergy in strengthening and flourishing in difficult times, let's be honest, the church here in Australia. I think it's something I've only become aware of in the last 18 months, but those organisations consolidating and coming together are able to envisage something together which we can't do separately. And that's so important in the future.
What I have found both wonderfully joyful and truly humbling is the way in which our health ministry has risen to the challenge, along with all the other frontline workers around Australia. But their way in which they have reached out to the sick, the vulnerable around Bondi, and the poor, the homeless, are so much in line with the traditions of the Sisters of Charity, who Mary Aikenhead reached out, when she began her order, and there was a cholera epidemic in Ireland, and they reached out and they went into the homes. They went to where the people, the poor, were. And we've seen this again today and this last year, with our health workers going out beyond the walls of the hospital to reach out to those people, both in Melbourne and Sydney and up here in Brisbane, volunteering to go into aged care places where there were COVID outbreaks, putting themselves at risk, just like the sisters did. And I just think they are the lay ecclesial leaders. We as trustees, in a sense, are on the sidelines in a sense, just encouraging and watching humbly as they do what the sisters have done. And it's just a beautiful thing to be part of.
When we visit as trustees, certainly we go there to check on mission. We want to see that mission is in action. We want to see that our ministry is a ministry of care for the poor and the vulnerable. But we don't just want it to be maintenance, we also want it to be growth. So when we go into a mission, we want to be able to see that there is growth, that it is alive with the vision and the charism of the Sisters of Charity. And that Mary Aikenhead's vision continues to live and thrive, not just is maintained. So we need to do that when we visit. But the second thing we need to do is we need to show our thanks for all of these wonderful, the thousands of people who are working in our ministries, because we go in not in a management sense. So we can go in an independent sense and look at them and say, wow, this is fabulous. And they know that when they tell us what they're doing or what they're not doing, they're not reporting to their managers. They're not reporting to the person who employs them, in a direct sense anyway. They're reporting to a different level. And I think that's a really powerful way for us to go.
I think it was Venerable Mary Aikenhead that said, the work of God cannot fail. And that's been a quote from Mother Mary that's been really given me great strength this year, and I'm sure the strength across our ministries. Stewardship visits for us as trustees are life-giving. They give us such energy to look at the practical expression of love that you, the Sisters of Charity, have so faithfully served our communities for many, many years. And today we get to go into the field and see those works in action. And so I had, just through circumstance, just before COVID hit, a visit to Gympie and to our Sunshine Coast aged care facilities, and just to see the love and the care that our people, and that's really the key message from me, our wonderful people in the field who, in very practical ways, are just such a blessing to those they serve. So for me, COVID's been fascinating in that in Mother Mary's time, it was cholera, it was high unemployment, it was famine. And now we face, in our times, COVID and the challenges they bring. And our stewardship visits have changed. We use words like Teams and Zoom and all sorts of new technologies, but the love is still there. The stewardship is still there. That way in which our people extend their hand to those in need are still there. So they're the traditions that, for me, as a trustee, are life-giving.
We've always, as Mary Aikenhead Ministries and as sisters, we've always been really concerned for the fringe of the poor and the marginalised, going to the margins. And probably one of the places where we see that more than anywhere else is in the prisons. Nobody puts their hand up to be in prison. But once they're there, how do we, as Mary Aikenhead Ministries, through our health, through the outreach when prisoners come out of jail, how do we walk with them so that they can live their life to their fullest? And it's also opening up doors, and one of the areas of inclusion that we need to start to consider is, what about the young ladies who are in juvenile justice? We have expertise in education and in walking with young girls, and indeed, when the five sisters arrived here in Sydney, most of the women they worked with were young girls and young women. And so perhaps one of the areas in which we need to just focus a little bit more is opening up the door to those young ladies who are really struggling in life and trying to manoeuvre their way through the complexities that today's contemporary society has for us.
I think one of the hidden, well, it's not so hidden, but one of the issues around the coronavirus has been the enormous increase in domestic violence. And I really think that we should, as an agency of the church, be looking at how to respond to that in a very real way, with real psychological and physical help, some sort of housing, because it's not just women, it's women with children. Mm-hmm. And that just drives me crazy thinking about these women and children who have to live in a car or haven't got anywhere to sleep because they're fleeing from a domestic violence situation. And I think COVID's really put a spotlight on that.
Yeah, and St Vincent, Sydney, in triage, they just drew up this special form that where everyone that came into triage, they asked questions around. Well, they were around domestic violence. The people didn't realise, and the increase in the patients just coming in to emergency, something like 40% more. They didn't come. They didn't come for domestic violence, but that was the cause of their visit, and it was a simple form that they developed. So it's
a real problem.
Reading the signs of the times. Yeah.
And I think following up the domestic violence is also how do we become much more informed. If we take Sister Anne and her work in rural and remote locations and the link to the country, Australia doesn't stop at the Great Divide. How do we become a little bit more informed about ways in which we can engage with regional and wider parts of our community? And obviously part of that is also the domestic violence, which very sadly occurs in First Nations, Aboriginal communities. We need an insight into the culture and the society of the diverse communities that now exist in our Australian community.
One of the things we did talk about at our AGM last week was the fact that we're trying as trustees to become more strategic in the way we approach the ministries, no longer just operational. And we think that's very important for our ministries. We need to understand their challenges very much, and we need to be able to respond to those challenges.
And then Penny, you came in when Richard was talking about that the other day, and you said we just always need to keep the eye on the mission.
Obviously, I have younger children, so I very much see adolescent mental health, and we have great insight into that with the schools. But I see that as it's present in society, but it's emerging because the way young adults navigate those teenage years, those adolescent years, will have enormous impact on how they are as adults. And I think we're seeing the impact of technology in a way that is completely unanticipated and not accounted for by adults. And it can only really have negative consequences for young people. So really my call would be we need to do a lot more thinking and a lot more work on how we make our young women resilient and how we teach them that strength of character means they can control the devices rather than having the technology control them.
We've been very blessed, I think, to be part of the way in which we've reached out to our Indigenous sisters and brothers. In the health ministry, I was on the board when St Vincent's began the journey of increasing the employment of Indigenous people, health workers, in our organisation. So we were a little disappointed when we realised that the percentage of Indigenous people employed in our organisation was so low. So through the Reconciliation Action Plan that we developed, we decided that we were going to increase that number significantly. And over the years when I was a board director, there was an incredible success around that. And so moving into the role as a trustee, I was able to continue that connection with our Aboriginal brothers and sisters, and in ways that I didn't think was going to be possible. I was able to attend as a trustee the St Vincent's Health annual gathering, I guess, of Indigenous employees up here in Brisbane, and listen to their stories and to hear their journey. And it touched me incredibly in the way in which they have had to struggle to be recognised and to not be ashamed of their Indigenous background, and the way in which they were bullied at school, but yet they came through all that. And the people that are working in our organisation as Indigenous sisters and brothers of ours, we should be truly, truly proud of what they're doing and what they will achieve into the future.
Mary Aikenhead said, when we have so much to praise the Lord for, we must not complain. And to me, going forward, there are perhaps more than the last 20 years in our society, challenges coming that the Sisters of Charity and Mary Aikenhead Ministries will be on the front lines of. We are seeing fiscal, economic stimulus working its way out of the system, and this means that more families are going to be vulnerable, more children vulnerable, and we really need to actually step up and believe in that sort of that option for the poor. And that's something that the sisters have done their whole lives, and something we take forward as Mary Aikenhead Ministries. The core ministries, aged care, hospitals, health, have been under such strain over the last 12 months. And going forward, we're going to see a different kind of strain in terms of government budget tightening, and perhaps, sadly, at a time when there'll be more and more need for the sort of services that are at the heart of the life-giving ministry of Jesus that the Sisters of Charity and through Mary Aikenhead Ministries take to people. So one has to be optimistic and one mustn't complain, but certainly our model of stewardship will be tested over the coming years. We are well placed, we have great resources, great people, but it will be something that will need a great deal of leadership, prayerful consideration, and an excellence in stewardship over the coming decade.
I'm amazed by the intellect and the bravery of our researchers and the ingenuity of our researchers. And so going forward, making sure that I think largely the philanthropy that is required for research is still there. So the idea of research to me is really, really important. And so the huge new centre which is planned for Melbourne, the Garvan, the Victor Chang in Sydney, the areas in Brisbane, all of those things, we can't lose sight of the fact that Mary Aikenhead put us at the cutting edge, and we need to maintain ourselves at the cutting edge while we're also doing all the things that are traditionally accepted as our mission.
With regard to Mary Aikenhead Ministries and the trustees, I think it's important that we have in our ministries the right structures, and in the education area where there is a great deal still to be done, we do not necessarily have all the skills ourselves. And what we're presently doing is putting together a board of people with the appropriate skills to ensure that that particular ministry can flourish going forward. And I think that's part of our role, to ensure in our ministries we've got the right people. To come back to what you were saying, Claire, what is good is the fact that now we being at least one other trustee and myself, meet with Claire or whoever the congregational leader will be going forward. I hope that continues, to talk about the various matters that arise over the last couple of months. And rather than exchanging emails between each other or letters or people having misunderstandings, we have the opportunity to talk about what we're doing. You can tell us what you're doing and what we could do to perhaps ensure that the work that the charism continues on.
It's lovely to be at this stage where we can have conversations, and I know it's a word we don't like, but Paul McClintock often talks about heads up. And it is good. It is good just to have it sharing around the table.
And we
because it
trust each
stops.
other.
That's
I think
it.
we trust each other.
Total trust.
And that makes a big difference.
Total
Yeah.
trust in the trustees, total trust in the boards and their chair people.
If we do a good job, whatever job quite means, it is going to have an enormous effect on many, many people. And we also have a responsibility to the sisters who have appointed us to carry on the works that they began. I believe we have with the trustees the right people to be able to do that going forward. I'm very hopeful that we are going to be very successful, and I think the ministries are going to flourish in the years to come.
And what I can assure the next congregational leader and council and the member representative that we hand over a group of trustees, very ably led, although I know you're a collegial group by Richard, that they can just build on, that they can support you, they can form. No doubt we'll need more trustees. There's a good formation program there. They can be formed, but they can rest assured as they come that Mary Aikenhead Ministries is alive, is well. As I said, it's up on the mountain having this wonderful conversation with Jesus, and they are fantastic followers, each woman and man of Jesus. So all will be well.